Hey guys, just checking back in. Wanted to give you guys a recap of days 11 through 18. Let's get right into it. So I was actually planning on staying at my house for a few days. I had to take a couple more days because I ended up getting sick. I had to leave though. I was getting a little bit better, but I still wasn't 100%. But it was a nice day and I thought I could do it. So I was out. So this part of the trip was quite different because it was where I'm from. So a lot of the routes were really familiar, so there was a lot less of the time I had to take actually looking at GPSs, and I could kind of slow down and relax. I got to go through my alma mater, which was really nice. It was a beautiful day. The camp was completely empty because it was summer. I had a great time going through. So I did have some trouble this morning. Starting off, I had some slits in my tires from before, but the sealant was working. But at this point, it started to fail. I think it was running out of sealant, and I was slowly losing pressure. I wasn't too worried about it, though, because I'd already planned to stop at the bike shop, which is where I'm coming up to next. And here I am, the famous Kim's Bike Shop in New Brunswick. Awesome, awesome spot. Dave, Kim, and his whole family have always taken care of me so well. No exception here. Got my bike completely tuned up, replaced the tires, everything ready. I felt really comfortable going out this time. If you live in the New Brunswick area, Kim's Bike Shop is the place to go to. Definitely make that your home base. Now we get on the canal path, the Raritan Canal Trail, and I've ridden this trail before. I absolutely love it. The one thing I did notice this time around was from the last time that there was a lot more loose, larger rocks, which made it really difficult, especially with all the pack on the back. It felt like I wasn't really catching the right way with the tires, and I felt like I was wasting a lot of effort. You see here, there's these big chunky rocks. It's making the ride a lot harder. It's making me lose effort. I'm trying to find a track. I was really concerned that the entire trail was going to be that way, but fortunately for me, it cleared out after a little bit. So beyond the trail itself, I was still feeling under the weather, like I said before, but it was a beautiful day. I was excited to be out there. It was a wonderful time. A lot of people that don't know Jersey, or even some people that do that don't bike a lot, are really, really surprised and impressed when they actually find out about the Raritan Canal Trail, because one, it's relatively well maintained. The second is there's really a lot of pristine area around here. People think of Jersey as being really traffic and dense and a lot of residential area, which is true, but this path doesn't really fall into any of that. It's really unbroken for a long amount of time, and it's a really, really good trail. And I knew this before, but now having some type of comparison with all of the stuff that I've done in the Northeast, I'm really impressed with how Jersey has been able to pull this off. Now that I've gotten a little bit further into the trail and past the beginning of it, like I said, that large, loose rock kind of started to go away. It was more of a fine gravel, which is really, really good with the gravel tires. I was making some really good time. Gorgeous stretch here. The sun was starting to go down. The weather was really nice. The view between the canal and the river over here, it's just a really, really unique experience. And at this point, if you guys have seen any of my other videos, you guys know I'm a sucker for tunnels or bridges, and this is no exception. I always love this little section right here over the river. It's really nice to just have something that's uniquely for the pedestrians or bikes. And as you can see, just more of this trail. There was very few sections that I said, like I came across any other roads going across, which is wonderful when you're in the thick of it, but it can actually be pretty difficult at times when you're looking for snacks or water. There's really not much there, so you got to plan well. Thankfully, partially through the trail, just as I was starting to run out of water, there was a little kayak rental area. It was a slower day. He actually did have some snacks and waters and drinks. I stopped to talk to him for a little bit. It was a nice little break from the day. And I was really glad he was there. His prices were great, and I really, really needed something to drink. Again, we're coming up to an overpass section. It's really nice to see that they're investing something that probably costs quite a bit of money that isn't going to actually contribute to car traffic, but is there for pedestrians and bikes. Definitely love to see that. And just more trail. If I'm not mistaken, I think if you go in its entirety for this trail, there's a version that goes all the way from New Brunswick, I think, to Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's something like 100 miles.
Now you know what one of the most beautiful things in the world is? A Wawa on the trail. Let's go. Hey guys, I'm actually in Jersey right now. I'm on the end of the canal trail path. It was a good day. I got bike all fixed up. Just left my house today. Got 60 miles in, even with the stop at the bike shop. I'm laying down to sleep, and it is so hot. It is ridiculously hot. It's still like 80 something degrees, and the sun went down like an hour ago. I'm gonna try and sleep. Good night, guys.
So I did not sleep well that night. It was super hot and humid, and to make it worse, the clothes that I was wearing, I left out to try and dry a little bit, and they actually got wetter because it's so humid. So the whole next day, I was just drenched. Here we are going through Trenton, and I know a lot of times it gets kind of a bad rep, and it definitely can be a rougher area, and there are rougher areas, but I was really impressed with Trenton. It's cleaned up quite a bit since the last time I've been there. Kudos to you guys. The other thing was, going through Trenton actually was pretty easy with the bike, and it was pretty accessible. They had a lot of really nice trails. People were pretty courteous, which is saying something for Jersey. So overall, Trenton, good job. Now on the Delaware Trail portion of the canal trail, which goes south, it definitely wasn't as well maintained as the Raritan portion, but there was definitely a good amount of trail, and it wasn't difficult to go through. It was just a little bit more overgrown. And then here, again, bridge action. This is a nice little junction part. If you go over 295, you'll recognize this. This is the inlet part of where the Delaware meets, I forget what river or canal it is, but this is a gorgeous little section. I love this. So one of the cooler things about South Jersey in particular is there's a lot of these old downtown areas. I think this is Bridgeton, no exception. Cute little downtown, a lot of really cool shops. Unfortunately for me, it's pretty early, and I don't think any of them were open. And again, still in Jersey, but there's just more trail. Yes, we are a dense state, but it seems like we are doing the right things to take steps to make biking accessible. And I felt really safe for the most part going through a state that can be difficult to navigate by car. And here, more trail. The one thing I will say, and this isn't anybody's fault, but this was definitely a hot, humid day. And because this is an open field, this was pretty rough. This is the early part of the morning, but it was still really hot, and I did not like the sun exposure. Again, here, great little trail area, a little bit more of that exposure, so I was suffering a little bit. I was a little bit more dehydrated, and I don't think I was doing too well of a job of rehydrating myself today. Even though it was high and it was open, I was really enjoying the scenery. It was gorgeous to have such a wide open view, especially the northern part of the Delaware. Definitely really like that. Was really glad to get this section. A little rougher part of the trail, but the tree coverage was definitely welcome from the beating sun. Definitely needed that. That's going to be a theme going on more for the next few days too. Now this is a section that breaks my heart. So this is Camden, New Jersey, and this is the town over from where I grew up, and a lot of my family actually grew up in Camden proper. Now Camden's always had a long and rough history, but lately there's been talk that, oh, it's improving, oh, it's getting better, and from what I've seen going through it, it's just not true. All of the money that was put aside to invest in helping people and the residents of Camden, it's all got invested in the waterfront because that was where people could make money, not where actual residents were helped. Now, if you know anything about Jersey politics, you know there's a lot of corruption, and especially in the Camden area and even recently, and this is the result. When people are corrupt and they take money from the people that need it, this is what happens to their living situation. It needs to stop because it's affecting real people. And here I am coming up on my parents' house. This was really getting to the point where I was exhausted. It really wasn't a long ride for me. I think it was only 50-something miles, but it was so humid. There was a lot less of that tree coverage that I had from the days before. I was still feeling a little sick. I was exhausted, and I was just really ready to just stop for another few days. I think I needed a little bit more rest. And here we go. I was exhausted. I was overheating. There was one thing and one thing on my mind. I needed to cool down. This felt so good. Now, everybody, this is Doggette. This is one of the biggest reasons why I decided to raise funds for the animal shelter. She is such a positive thing in all of our lives, and she's just so excited to see me, and I'm so excited to see her.
All right, so I'm about to leave my parents' house in Gloucester. If I was to say that I wasn't nervous for what's coming up, I'd be lying. So coming down here from Trenton, I'm used to heat. I like heat. But the heat that's coming up is excessive. There are days where it's projected to be 100 with high humidity. And on top of that, I'm coming up on a really rough stretch of road up in Maryland. And there's supposed to be off and on thunderstorms for the next 10 days. So this might be the most difficult part of my trip, but gotta keep going. Let's do this.
And basically everything I said there was pretty spot on prediction, but we'll get to that later. Leaving here, going through Camden again. This is the waterfront side. This is what I was talking about before. It's where a little bit more of the money went to. Again, you won't see a lot of houses in general. These are a lot of businesses or the Rutgers campus. And it looks good because this is where people come into work, but they don't live here. When people are talking about that Camden is getting better, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the waterfront. They're not talking about the entire city. Now here we are climbing over the Ben Franklin Bridge, and this was an absolutely gorgeous day. And once I got to the top of the bridge, I'm going to show this on Instagram. There's a wonderful view of the skyline of Philadelphia. Was really excited to get into this. And once getting through the city, again, it was a big contrast from New York. It was a little bit more like Boston, not completely. Boston was really exceptional, but there was a lot of infrastructure for bikes, and there was, even though there was traffic, it was a lot easier to get around. There was trails that went around, even though it was not completely separate like Boston. It was completely dedicated to bikes. I didn't feel unsafe. I felt like I could get to where I needed to go. There was a little bit of stop and go with some of the lights. There were definitely times where I had to stop with traffic, but that's to be expected. It's a pretty urban area, but for the most part, I felt safe. I felt like I could get to where I needed to in a reasonable fashion. I felt like people were actually respecting me being on the bike. Overall, I think that Philadelphia has done a pretty good job of keeping everything in together for the infrastructure for bikes. Now, this spot, I've done this before, but this is an amazing section. To my left, there's the art museum. In front of me, you see that beautiful skyline of Philadelphia. Right across the way as I'm going over is the Schuylkill Trail. This is probably on par with that section that I was talking about with Boston. There was definitely a lot of people that were out there and taking advantage of the trail. It wasn't congested. People weren't completely blocking the way. A lot of times with trails like this, pedestrians can kind of get in the way of cyclists or vice versa. Definitely didn't feel like that. There was definitely a lot of room for everybody to move around, for everybody to get by courteously without any kind of obstruction, and it was still a very useful way to get through the city. Absolutely love this section. Now, I didn't think I was going to be able to leave Philadelphia without some Philly energy. We are definitely in the thick of the city, and yes, that's a beaver. Now, just past Pensy is Delaware, and the first city in Delaware is Wilmington. Now, I've driven past Wilmington a million times, but I've never actually been through Wilmington in this way, and I was really impressed. It was a cute little downtown. I didn't stop anywhere, but there were a lot of shops and whatnot that I definitely would have stopped if I had the time. As you can see, not a lot of congestion, a lot of things to do, a lot of space for the bike to go through, and just outside there was some wonderful trails going by the river. A lot like the Schuylkill Trail. I was really impressed with it. There was definitely not as many people out. I actually kind of wish there were more people, but a good sign for trails like this is there's not conflict between pedestrians and bikes, and that was really nice to see. Again, there was these little flourish things that made it a little bit more appealing to be on the trail. They had some throwbacks to, I think, which was like the shipping industry. It definitely added to the character of the trail. It didn't make it unnecessarily problematic getting through the trail. The surfaces were all really good. I was really, really impressed with Delaware overall. Again, outside of the city a little bit, the trail still continues. It's still definitely well maintained. They're definitely investing in the bike infrastructure. Kudos to Delaware here too. And again, more trail. And trail you got to invest in. This isn't just pavement. This is actual infrastructure like bridges and overpassing rivers and marshes. Kudos. They're actually looking out for the bikes. Now, once just past Wilmington, you get a little bit more into Delaware. This is considered a quote-unquote bike trail. And you see there is something off to the right, but that's not what we're talking about. The lane that I'm in is the bike trail. And this is going to be a theme for Delaware and Maryland. And here we are. So the next day in Maryland was definitely not off to a good start. I got forced out of where I was way earlier than I really wanted to. Didn't really have much sleep. Had to leave before the sun came up. And on top of that, this is what they consider the bike way. It's literally just the shoulder of the highway, and they painted on some, this is where you can bike, just to say that they could. But they didn't do anything special to take care of it. There was no separation. They didn't even clean the side of the road. So a lot of the times when I was riding through, it was just like debris and glass. And because of that, I ended up actually having to deal with another tire issue because I had glass all up and down my tire. Make it worse, the weather was absolutely horrendous. It was raining the entire time, and I was on this roadway the whole time. To add insult to injury, the one section that crosses over the Susquehanna, I forget the name of the bridge, the police wouldn't let me cross. It was the actual designated area for bikes, and they even had a button for bikes to go over, but he wouldn't let me go, so I had to call an Uber and pay for that.
Yeah, dude, where are you going?
Florida.
Florida?
Yep.
Awesome. I use bicycle.
Now, I finally got to Baltimore, and I do like the city of Baltimore, but it was just more of the same. The roads were trash. There was trash on the roads. It was really unsafe to ride through. Again, designated bike route, but I just had a really sketchy time going through it. Now, I'm not talking about the aspects of the actual city, but getting around was a big contrast from Philadelphia. I did not like riding my bike through it. It did not feel safe. It did not feel organized. And people didn't respect me.
What the f***, guys? Jesus Christ. You don't need to speed around me.
I guess people in Baltimore really just needed to save those 5 seconds it took for them to just wait to go around me. Now, once I got to the inner harbor part of Baltimore, things definitely slowed down. There was a few more trails. It was more, I guess, pedestrian focused, but at that point, being on the highways for so long, it was really welcome to just slow down and not have to deal with so much of the chaos. There was definitely a separated bike lane finally. It didn't look as well maintained as other places I've been to, and I am generally just not a fan of the opposite side of the road kind of situation. But it's better than nothing. Again, people didn't respect anything. They just stopped right in the middle of it, but what can you do? In some of the more quiet areas, the brick houses, kind of like a faux colonial situation, they were really cool. It was a really nice neighborhood. It was a nice situation. Again, I really do like Baltimore, the city, but I did not like biking around it. And once I got outside of Baltimore, there were more trails. Not really super well maintained. There was definitely some stuff all over, and there was a lot of routes, so it's really hard riding. I got a hotel for the night to refresh. The next day definitely felt a lot better. This stretch would be slightly better. There was a lot more trail. Definitely did not hit any highways or roadways the same way that I did before in the northern part of Maryland. It was ramping up to be a pretty hot day. The trails were nice. I did have some more mechanical issues. I ended up having to stop at a bike shop. They tried to refill the tubeless tire. It didn't work, so I had to throw a tube in the back wheel. Not the biggest deal, but it took a chunk of time. Again, there's more trails here. Was definitely excited about that. Now, these couple days where it was rainy and, like I said, a hot before, this was no exception. It was definitely a hot day. But I was going to meet some even hotter weather later, and we'll get to that. This section is going from Baltimore to Annapolis. It's not the most direct way to where I was going, but again, I wasn't going to argue this time. I was just glad to be off the road. I was glad to be on trail. There were a few more of those bike shops that were on the trail. Unfortunately, this time when I needed a little bit more of the help, they weren't directly there. And this is the bridge going into Annapolis. I believe it's Naval Cadet Bridge or Naval Academy Bridge. But it was definitely a nice town. Beyond the obvious Naval Academy stuff, I think they were going for a throwback colonial kind of feel to it. Definitely a hipster feel to it, which is fun. I like that. On this street up the ways, I stopped at a little cafe. I think it was like a little vegan shop, which I do like vegan food, even though I'm not vegan. I really wasn't impressed. It was okay, but it really wasn't that good, and it was exorbitantly expensive. I wouldn't recommend that place, so I'm not even going to tell you what it was. Again, going through Annapolis, it was definitely more of a touristy, hipstery kind of vibe, which for the bike, I'm totally glad. People were more accepting of the bikes. People were a lot less chaotic. It was a little bit slower. It was a little bit more of a relaxed situation. Definitely a much better feel going through Annapolis than I did through Baltimore. Again, like I said, I had lost time with the bike tire. Then my bike bag broke. I ended up trying to fix it for almost an hour. We get to DC. Here we are. But I wasn't able to do it. I had to rig it, and we're going to figure that out later. But so we're getting closer to the downtown DC. And this is where I really started to feel and ramp up with the heat. I think this day we were in the low to mid 90s, and this was not even close to the hottest day. Luckily, again, I was in a little bit more urban of an area, so there are definitely places to stop and come down. Definitely stopped a lot this day to rehydrate. Had some Slurpees, so it was nice. DC, I don't know why. I can't explain it exactly, but it gave me like a urban European feel. Like, not the sections that you would think of, like the historic, like Rome or like historic London, like the outskirts where people actually live, the more urban kind of realistic areas. There was a lot of bike pathways. There was a lot of roundabouts. There was a lot of really low infrastructure. There's not a lot of high rises in DC. I think there's a reason for that. There was a lot of people out actually for the soccer matches that were there. There was the Euro finals, so I saw a lot of people supporting Spain, and then I saw a whole bunch of people out for the Copa America with Colombia. So it definitely, to me, had a much more European feel than any other city. And the other thing was, there was a lot of traffic, but it didn't feel like local traffic or people trying to get through. It was a lot of tourist traffic. It was people either parking there to visit for the day, or a lot of tour buses. It didn't look like there was a lot of people driving through there because they needed to drive through. But overall, it definitely gave me a little bit different of a feel. I wasn't too keen to stay there. It was a little bit more touristy than my taste. Also, it was way too hot to lose any more time. But it was nice to see a lot of the landmarks. I was definitely excited to see that. But at this point, wasn't worth me stopping. Now, once over the bridge, we are in Virginia. Really passing through a lot of states, but at this point, the states get a lot bigger, so the time in between states is going to be a lot longer. This trail was a really long one, so it went all the way from the bridge over the Potomac, all the way to Mount Vernon. And it was a wonderful, wonderful trail. I was super excited about it. It was a lot of fun. If it wasn't so hot, I think I'd enjoy it a lot better. The one caveat is it goes for a really long stretch. And I got faked out a lot of times because I definitely did pack a lot of water, but I ran out. And there was all these water fountains that were going along the trail, but none of them worked. So I kept trying desperately at certain points at the end of this, you'll see, to stop for something to drink, and there was just nothing. At this point, I did go through a town, but at that point, I thought that I had a little bit of a buffer room. I had more water, but I should have planned it better. Part of it's on me, and part of it's on the fact that those water fountains just did not work. Now, this was a cool little section. It was under the overpass. It looked a lot like that section I showed you from New York, except a lot less chaotic and I think a little bit more useful. There's a lot of people hanging out under here. So some LARPers over here. Haven't seen that yet. Good for them. Have some fun. Again, with the heat and the sun, I think I was just happy to have a little bit of shade for another time. But I was relatively, actually pretty impressed with this section of Virginia as far as the trails and infrastructure. There was definitely a lot of people out here. There was a lot of these cool little bridge action things, but I think I was just so delirious from being dehydrated, I didn't get to take in the full aspect of it. I was just looking for some rest. And here, guys, you know, I'm all about the dogs, but you got to be smart with them. If your dog is not trained and it's not safe, it's got to be on a leash. So here, again, forgot that I was recording. This happens a lot now. Some bonus video. This is part of that Mount Vernon trail where I'm just trying to relax. And the reemergence of the pickled sausage, I think this is just a theme now. It's good, though. It's got everything I need. It's got the protein. It's got the calories. It's got that salt that I need. So there might be more appearances of the pickled sausage. Here, as we got further out, there was a lot more marinas, actually, which was really cool to see, that people were taking advantage of the ability to go on the river. It was definitely a cool little area going around the marina. And like I said, this trail was really long and it was really impressive. I just was way too dehydrated to fully enjoy it. I think I'm enjoying it looking back more on the video now. So at this point, I'm getting to the end of my rope. I'm getting tired. The day, even though it seems like midday as far as me biking, it's starting to be the end of my day. I'm running out of food. I'm really close to running out of water. I'm ready to stop, but this trail just kept going, and I just kept getting bamboozled by the water fountains. I really, really wish I would have planned better because it was a nice trail. But I just was suffering at this point. I was completely suffering, and the heat was not adding to it. And more insult to injury, at the very end of it, there was a lot more climbing. I was really struggling. I really should have planned better, but it is what it is. In a weird turn of events, I actually did go to Mount Vernon. I didn't go into the museum part. I only grabbed water, but I went to Mount Vernon, so that's the thing. So the next few days were absolutely brutal. So the high on the first day was 96 degrees with humidity. And on top of that, to make it even worse, there was a lot of climbing, more than I had in a little bit of time, I guess, since Connecticut. I think it was like 3,500 feet of climbing. And even though I had all of that going, I did pretty well. I ended up getting, I think, 68 miles the first day. And I was a lot more careful about staying hydrated. I found a few more spots to have some extra water bottles. I slowed it down a little bit. I took more breaks. I just wanted to survive this one. And as far as I think I did pretty well. Again, in theme, more bike troubles. Here's some more bonus footage. As you can see, I'm not happy. I'm filthy. I'm frustrated. I'm losing time. So I was having some issues with the front wheel. It was kind of wobbling, so I had to take it off, readjust the hub a little bit. Lost some time there. Was definitely frustrated with the heat. But looking back, I'm kind of impressed with just dealing with the problem. So, tutto andrà bene. Once past the mechanical spot and getting beyond just the regular weather, it was really gorgeous riding. This part of Virginia was a lot more rural. There was nothing really in between. There were scattered houses, but this is probably, honestly, one of the more dense areas that I saw. The roads were pretty calm. Anybody that went by were pretty good about not blowing past me. Definitely had a good time riding, even though it was difficult. But the route itself was really good. I really wish the weather wasn't so extreme. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot. That's not too fair to say. I did actually pretty much enjoy it. I just had to be a little bit worried about the extreme. Now, this was the only real spot of any kind of conglomeration of people. This is Fredericksburg. It was a cute little town. I did notice something, and this is just my ignorance. All over town, there's a lot of French flags, and I have no idea why. So if anybody knows anything about Virginia history or Fredericksburg history in particular, let me know. Why were there a bunch of French flags? And again, right past there, more rural area. Heading towards the end of my day here, definitely exhausted. I think the benefit to this, though, was it was a lot easier to find somewhere to, at the end of the day, just post up and camp, because there wasn't going to be anybody bothering me. There wasn't going to be anywhere that was going to cause an issue. Although the heat was just so difficult. It made it, again, so hard to sleep. So I didn't sleep too well. Here, the next day, this is 102 degrees, I think we got up to that day. And even though I got most of the climbing out the day before, there was still a lot of just like chunked climbing for this day. So I'm getting this brutal humidity, brutal heat, and these just really steep climbs. I think at this, if I can get through this part, I don't see how any of the rest of the ride is going to be any harder. And this is the pinnacle. I think this was the highest elevation for the day. You see, this is midday, mid-heat, completely in the sun, super steep. I did a lot better about getting water, so I was definitely hydrated, but there is just no escape from any of this. Again, I've said it before, I am really good with the heat. I like the heat. But this was crazy, especially the sections where this is more of a local road, but it took me on some of the like local highways, not here. Local highways, like I think it was Route 1. That blacktop just radiates that heat back up. So it's kind of threefold. So it's the heat, it's the humidity, and then it's just bottom heat boiling back up. It really takes a lot of the energy out of you. And there's just really, for the most part, no escape. Luckily, there were some sections where there still are trees, so when I could, I found some shade. With the humidity, it didn't help as much, but it was something. Finally made it to Richmond. Got a recommendation from my girlfriend Lauren for lunch supper. Wonderful little spot in Richmond. Food was so good. The waitresses were fantastic, so nice. I was by myself, but I didn't feel like I was being singled out. Definitely recommend that. And that about does it. I'm going to spend the rest of the day here in Richmond. Tomorrow morning, I leave. A couple days, be halfway through, almost to North Carolina. Till next time, see you further down the coast.